What's up, everyone? Hope everybody's having a great day. Today, we need to talk about something that's haunted NASCAR for decades, a pattern so dark that when news broke about Greg Biffle's plane crash, every old-timer in the sport felt that familiar sick feeling in their stomach. Because we've been here before, too many times. NASCAR and aviation crashes have a tragic history that goes back over 60 years. From Davey Allison to Alan Kulwicki to the Hendrick Motorsports tragedy to now the Biffle family, the racing community has lost more people to aircraft accidents than any other sport. And folks, when you see the full list, when you understand just how many champions and legends we've lost in the sky, you start to realize this isn't coincidence. There's something about NASCAR culture, about the demands of the sport, about the type of people who race that creates a deadly relationship with aviation. Let me start with the harsh reality. Since NASCAR began, we've lost over 30 people connected to the sport in aviation accidents. 30. That's not including close calls, near misses, and non-fatal crashes. We're talking about drivers, crew chiefs, team owners, family members, all killed in planes and helicopters. No other professional sport comes close to this number. Not Formula One, not IndyCar, not NFL, NBA, or MLB. NASCAR stands alone in its tragic relationship with aviation death. And the question we have to ask ourselves is why? What is it about stock car racing that sends so many of its people to die in the sky? The answer starts with geography and schedule. NASCAR runs 36 races a year across the entire United States. From Daytona to Sonoma, from New Hampshire to Phoenix, teams and drivers are constantly traveling. Commercial flights don't always work with the schedule. You can't fly commercial from a small town in North Carolina to Talladega and make it in time for practice. So private aviation becomes not just convenient, but necessary. Drivers own planes. Team owners have fleets. Even crew members sometimes fly private. It's part of the NASCAR ecosystem. And with that much flying, with that many hours in the air, statistics say accidents will happen. But it goes deeper than just logistics. NASCAR attracts a certain type of person. Risk takers, adrenaline junkies, people who think they're invincible. The same personality that makes someone willing to drive 200 miles per hour inches from other cars also makes them think they can fly through weather that would ground commercial flights. The same confidence that lets them thread the needle at Daytona makes them believe they can handle any emergency in the air. The same need for control that makes them great drivers makes them want to fly their own planes rather than trust someone else. It's a personality type that excels at racing, but can be deadly in aviation. Let's talk about specific tragedies, because each one tells us something about this pattern. July 13th, 1993. Davey Allison attempts to land his helicopter at Talladega Superspeedway. He was 32 years old, son of NASCAR legend Bobby Allison, already a superstar with 19 Cup wins. The helicopter gets caught in its own rotor wash, loses control, crashes in the infield. Davey dies the next day from head injuries. The investigation found he had limited helicopter experience, less than 40 hours total flight time.
He'd bought the helicopter to make travel easier, to spend more time with family between races. Instead, it killed him. The same confidence that made him a champion made him think 40 hours was enough experience to fly into a confined area in challenging conditions. 3 months earlier, April 1st, 1993, Alan Kulwicki boards a private plane in Knoxville, heading to Bristol for the Food City 500. The defending Winston Cup champion, the Polish prince who'd beaten the big teams with determination and intelligence. The plane encounters ice, loses control, crashes into a field, killing Kulwicki and 3 others. He was 38 years old. The investigation found the pilots attempted to fly through known icing conditions. They thought they could handle it. They were wrong. Kulwicki wasn't flying that day, but he chose to get on that plane. He trusted pilots who made a fatal decision. The same drive that pushed him to race when others would rest, pushed him to fly when others would have waited for better weather. October 24th, 2004, is a date that still brings tears to NASCAR people. A Beechcraft King Air, carrying Hendrick Motorsports personnel, crashes into Bull Mountain near Martinsville. 10 people dead, including Rick Hendrick's son Ricky, his brother John, his twin nieces, and key team members. They were flying to the race like they did every weekend. The pilots got confused in fog, thought they were somewhere they weren't, flew straight into a mountain. The best organization in NASCAR lost 10 family members in seconds, all because of spatial disorientation and the pressure to get to the track on time. But here's the pattern that emerges when you study these crashes. It's rarely mechanical failure.
It's almost always human factors. Pilots flying beyond their capabilities, weather decisions that prioritize schedule over safety, spatial disorientation in clouds, fuel exhaustion from poor planning. The same factors over and over. Which tells us this isn't about bad luck. It's about culture. A culture that values speed over safety, that rewards risk-taking, that sees caution as weakness. The exact culture that makes NASCAR exciting is the culture that kills its people in airplanes. The July 6, 1998 crash that killed Mark Colley's pilot and 2 others. They were flying to a NASCAR event. Engine failure, attempted emergency landing. Didn't make it. The April 19, 2000 crash that killed Adam Petty. Tony Stewart's plane running off a runway in 2019. Mike Stefanik dying in a plane crash in 2019. The list goes on and on. Different years, different aircraft, different circumstances, same result. NASCAR people dying in aviation accidents at a rate that defies statistical probability. What makes this pattern even more troubling is that many of these crashes were preventable. Davey Allison shouldn't have been flying that helicopter with so little experience. The Hendrick plane shouldn't have attempted that approach in those conditions. Kulwicki's pilots shouldn't have flown through icing. These weren't acts of God. They were human decisions. Bad decisions made by people who thought they could handle anything because they'd succeeded at everything else. The same mentality that says, I can make that pass at Talladega, says, I can land in this fog. And sometimes it works. But when it doesn't, people die. The economics of NASCAR also play a role. Unlike stick and ball sports, where teams are based in cities, NASCAR teams are mostly based in the Charlotte area, but races are nationwide. A driver living in North Carolina who owns a team might need to be in Phoenix for a race, Miami for a sponsor event, and back to Charlotte for a team meeting, all in the same week. Commercial aviation can't handle that schedule. Private aviation can. So drivers and owners buy planes. They hire pilots or get licensed themselves. They create their own little airlines, and they operate them with the same aggressive efficiency they bring to racing. There's also the sponsorship aspect. Sponsors want their drivers accessible. They want them at corporate events, dealer meetings, fan functions. A driver with a plane can do 3 appearances in 3 cities in one day. A driver flying commercial might manage 1. So the plane becomes a business tool, a way to maximize income and keep sponsors happy, but it also maximizes risk. More flights mean more exposure to weather, mechanical issues, and fatigue. The same plane that enables the business success becomes the instrument of tragedy. Let's talk about the psychological factor. NASCAR drivers spend their professional lives defying death. They walk away from crashes that should kill them. They survive impacts that destroy race cars. They develop a sense of invincibility. Death becomes abstract, something that happens to other people. So when they get in an airplane, they carry that invincibility with them. They don't see the danger. They don't respect the risks. They think their reflexes, their skill, their luck will save them. Right up until the moment, it doesn't. The Greg Biffle tragedy fits this pattern perfectly. Successful driver, private plane, trying to maintain a busy schedule. Flying in marginal weather. Making decisions that commercial aviation would never make. The same story we've seen dozens of times before. The only difference is the names and dates. The fundamental factors remain unchanged. NASCAR people using aviation as a tool. Aviation not forgiving the mistakes that racing does. Physics winning over confidence. Gravity claiming more victims from a sport that should have learned by now. What's particularly heartbreaking is that after each tragedy, there are calls for change. After Davey Allison, there was discussion about restricting helicopter operations. After the Hendrick crash, there were proposals for mandatory weather minimums. After each incident, people say, never again. But nothing really changes. The economic pressures remain. The geographic challenges persist. The personality types don't alter, so the crashes continue. The only thing that changes is the names on the memorial plaques. The technology argument is interesting too. Modern aircraft have amazing safety systems: terrain warning, weather radar, autopilots, envelope protection. But NASCAR people often fly older aircraft. Why? Because they're cheaper, because they're simpler, because they don't require as much training. The same cost-cutting mentality that makes NASCAR teams competitive makes them vulnerable in aviation. They'll spend millions on race engines, but fly in 40-year-old aircraft with minimal avionics. They'll analyze crash data from races for hours, but ignore accident statistics from aviation. It's a blind spot that keeps killing people. There's also the macho factor. In NASCAR, admitting weakness is career suicide. You never say you're scared. You never back down from a challenge. You never let anyone see you sweat. That works on the track where bravery is rewarded. But in aviation, that attitude kills. Good pilots are cautious. They respect weather. They know their limitations. They're not afraid to cancel a flight or divert to another airport. But NASCAR culture sees that as weakness. So pilots push when they should pull back. They continue when they should stop. They attempt what they shouldn't, because saying no feels like failure. The crew and family factor adds another dimension. When a NASCAR person dies in a plane crash, it's rarely alone. Davy's friend Red Farmer was injured in his helicopter. The Kulwicki crash killed 3 others. The Hendrick crash killed 10. The Biffle crash killed 7. These aren't just individual tragedies. They're community disasters. Entire families wiped out. Key team personnel lost. Generations of talent and experience gone in seconds. The ripple effects last for years. Teams never fully recover. Families are destroyed. The sport itself is diminished. What's the solution? Some say NASCAR should ban private aviation for anyone connected to the sport. That's unrealistic and probably illegal. Others suggest mandatory training standards higher than FAA requirements. That might help, but enforcing it would be nearly impossible. The real solution has to come from within. The culture has to change. The mentality that racing success translates to aviation success has to be challenged. The idea that weather minimums are suggestions has to die. The notion that real racers don't need modern safety equipment has to end. But changing culture in NASCAR is like changing direction of an aircraft carrier. It takes time, distance, and tremendous force. The sport was built on risk-taking. It celebrates danger. It glorifies those who push limits. Asking NASCAR people to be cautious in airplanes is asking them to go against everything that made them successful. It's asking leopards to change their spots. It's asking warriors to become accountants. It might be necessary, but it's not natural. The insurance companies have tried to force change. Premiums for NASCAR-related aviation are astronomical. Some drivers can't get coverage at all, but that just means they fly without insurance, or they create shell companies to hide ownership. The FAA has investigated these crashes thoroughly. They've published reports and recommendations. But Part 91 operations remain largely unregulated. As long as you're not carrying passengers for hire, you can basically do whatever you want. And NASCAR people take full advantage of that freedom. The media coverage is part of the problem, too. When a NASCAR figure dies in a plane crash, it's huge news for a few days. Then it disappears. We move on to the next race, the next story, the next tragedy. We don't dwell on the patterns. We don't ask hard questions about why this keeps happening. We treat each crash as an isolated incident rather than part of a deadly trend. The media could force change by maintaining focus, but they don't. The show must go on. The racing must continue. The deaths become statistics. Personal responsibility is the elephant in the room. Every person who gets in a small plane accepts risk. Every pilot who takes off in marginal weather makes a choice. Every passenger who boards knowing conditions aren't ideal enables the system. Greg Biffle chose to own that citation. Dennis Dutton chose to fly it that day. The passengers chose to get on board. Nobody forced them. They weren't victims of circumstance. They were participants in a culture that accepts aviation risk as the price of doing business. And they paid the ultimate price. The young people coming up in NASCAR need to learn from this history. They need to understand that success on the track doesn't translate to safety in the air. They need to know about Davey and Alan and the Hendrick crash and now the Biffle tragedy. They need to see the pattern and break it. But will they? Or will they think they're different? Will they believe their generation is smarter, safer, more capable? Will they make the same mistakes, thinking technology or training or natural talent will protect them? History suggests they will. The pattern suggests the crashes will continue. What would it take to really change things? A massive tragedy involving a current superstar? A crash that kills a champion in their prime? Would losing Chase Elliott or Kyle Larson in a plane crash finally force change? Or would even that become just another memorial, another moment of silence, another addition to the long list of NASCAR aviation deaths? The cynical part of me thinks nothing will change. The pattern is too established, the culture too ingrained, the economic pressures too strong. But maybe the Biffle tragedy will be different. Maybe losing a champion, his wife and children, will finally wake people up. Maybe seeing 7 lives ended in 10 minutes will make the next person think twice. Maybe someone will remember that December morning and choose to drive instead of fly. Choose to wait for better weather. Choose to hire professional pilots instead of flying themselves. Choose life over convenience. Choose safety over schedule. Maybe. But I doubt it. Because NASCAR people don't choose safety. They choose speed. They choose risk. They choose the edge. It's who they are. It's what makes them racers. And it's what makes them die in airplanes. The statistical reality is brutal. If current patterns continue, we'll lose another NASCAR figure to aviation within the next 2 years. Someone reading this will die in a plane crash. Someone's favorite driver will become another statistic. Another family will be destroyed. Another memorial will be held. Another list of names will be added to the tragedy. And we'll have the same discussions about safety and culture and change. Then nothing will change. The planes will keep flying. The risks will keep accumulating. The crashes will keep happening. Because that's NASCAR's relationship with aviation. Written in blood, carved in granite, repeated endlessly. Thank you all for watching. This history lesson was hard to deliver but necessary to understand. NASCAR's relationship with aviation isn't just dangerous, it's deadly. It's claimed more lives than racing itself. It's destroyed more families than any crash at Daytona. Yet it continues. The planes keep flying, the pilots keep pushing, the culture keeps enabling, and people keep dying. Greg Biffle and his family are just the latest entries in a ledger that's been filling up for 60 years. They won't be the last. Not until something fundamental changes. Not until NASCAR culture evolves. Not until we stop accepting aviation death as the price of racing success. But that day seems far away. Maybe impossible. Maybe the sky will always be NASCAR's deadliest track. We'll see you at the checkered flag. Today it waves for too many souls claimed by aviation. Tomorrow it will wave for more. The pattern continues. The history repeats. The sky keeps taking its toll.